This month, DeepMind, a research lab inside Google, announced that they would make the AlphaFold protein structure database available to anyone on the internet. That's like releasing the Rosetta Stone of the genome. What does that mean and why that's so important? Before we start, please don't forget to subscribe to watch more videos like this. Proteins are large, complex structures essential to all life. Nearly every function in the body depends on them. Contracting muscles, sensing light, turning food into energy relies on them and how they move and change. For example, antibody proteins are Y-shaped, so they can hook into bacteria or viruses. By latching onto viruses and bacteria, these antibody proteins can detect and tag disease. The recipes for these proteins are inside our gene, what is called the DNA. An error in the genetic recipe can cause the malformation of these proteins, and then they can eventually cause death or disease to organisms carrying them. So many diseases end up being linked to these malformed proteins. But just because you know the genetic recipe of a protein doesn't mean that you know how it's gonna be formed. Proteins are formed by a chain of amino acids, but the DNA only contains the information of which amino acids will be contained in this protein, not its final shape or form. Amino acids interact with each other and attract or deplete each other. That forms a unique protein structure. The bigger the protein, the more difficult it is to figure out what is the structure that will be formed. And that's because there are more and more interactions between amino acids, so it becomes harder and harder to take them into account. And as described by the Levinthal's paradox, it would take longer than the age of the universe to enumerate all possible structures of a protein until we reach the true structure of it. So it's really hard to determine what's the 3D protein structure. Yet proteins fold themselves into place within milliseconds. Predicting how these chains will fold into this 3D intricate structure is what's called the protein folding problem. And scientists have been working on this problem for decades. So why is the protein folding problem so important? Scientists have long been interested in determining a protein structure because this structure determines its function. Once a protein shape is understood, its role within a cell can be guessed at, and drugs can be developed that interact with the protein's unique structure. Over the past 5 decades, researchers were able to determine the protein structure based on its DNA by trial and error. And it would take years of work and cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars per protein structure. So determining the protein structure computationally from the genome instead of through costly experimentation is a big deal and could help accelerate research overall. So how did DeepMind solve this problem? They've created a deep neural network that calculates the distance between amino acids and the angles between the chemical bonds between these amino acids. And so they calculate the distance between the protein that was formed computationally and the real protein and calculate a score called CASP from 0 to 100, 100 being the perfect match between the computational protein structure and the real protein. And anything higher than 90 means that they solved the problem of the protein folding structure. Using that score and a lot of training data of real proteins, they train a deep neural net to predict the structures, and they created a model that gets a score higher than 90. So they actually solved the protein folding structure problem. That's bonkers. So let's talk about AlphaFold DB, which is the database that they just released this month. They released the paper explaining the technique and the source code of AlphaFold, and they just released high-level predictions of every single protein in the human body and 20 other types of organisms. That's a total of over 350,000 protein structures. This is a big deal as researchers look for cures and solutions for diseases that affect the humankind. As a powerful tool to help researchers' efforts, this is one of the most significant contributions to research to date, and AI has powered everything behind it. And all these insights will underpin a lot of advances into biology and research in medicine. If you want to learn more about AI and deep learning, I recommend a book that's linked in this video. I hope you guys like this video, and I hope to see you in other videos. Bye!